All right. So hi, everyone. My name is Martha Serrano. I'm the coordinator for the Money Management Center here on campus. And today we have one of our favorite guest speakers, Megan Kolofer from Golden One, who's going to be presenting. And I know this is a topic that students are usually very interested because not only are you focused on your academics, but again, you're working or looking for employment, having that source of income to be able to, afford your education and your expenses. So Megan will be conducting this presentation. If people have questions, Megan, you let us know if you want us to stop you along the way or if you wanted to wait towards the end of the presentation. I'll be checking the chat box and the Q&A featured throughout the presentation. But now I will hand it over to Megan.
Thank you, everyone, so much for having me today. By all means, if you have questions, please let's post them up in the chat. It's going to be hard for me to toggle screens to see little hands, but if you have a question, get it in the chat, raise your hand, feel free to interrupt me. That's why we're here, right? Is to learn together. So without further ado, let me go ahead and share screen. Just a little bit about myself here as I get started. My name is Megan Kolofer. I'm Golden One Credit Union's Community and Financial Education Specialist. You might also see me walking around campus as an educator on campus in the English department. But before we get started, I'd like to just provide you with just a little bit of context on Golden One Credit Union. Golden One is a not-for-profit credit union and a member-owned financial institution. Our financial education department promotes and provides complementary and hopefully unbiased financial literacy tools and resources to a lot of the communities that we serve. As the verbiage reads on your screen there, views and opinions that are expressed by me might not always represent the views of Golden One Credit Union. I'm going to go ahead and get the webcast started. By all means, like I said, if you have questions, please post them in the chat. Just be mindful that this is being recorded. So let's try to refrain from putting a lot of personal information in there. If you do have any personal questions or financial literacy needs, feel free to reach out to me. I went ahead and posted my email address in the chat box too, except it's 1D, not 2. My bad. There's the correction for you. Once again, I'll try and keep an eye on that chat box as questions pop up. And so today I want to talk a little bit about earning your money. So as we make our way into our adult years, some of us are there, some of us think we'll never be there, but as we progress in our years, we soon realize that there's a lot of opportunities to be had, right? There's a lot of opportunities awaiting us really at any stage of our life. The type of education that you get can usually help determine what kind of money you make. But when it comes to wealth, it really doesn't matter how large your income is, right? Because of course you could build wealth faster with a larger income. But at the end of the day, your income doesn't guarantee that you're going to have this big nest egg when you retire. So you have to save and you have to invest that income throughout your career, no matter, how much you make. Of course, most of you are students, so we know the value of education, right? And a brighter future begins with this education because it's no secret that this good education has the power to change our lives, right? It's promising future and it's secure and hopefully stable. And a lot of us have heard, the more you learn, the more you earn, right? So that higher level of education that you achieve, the higher level of income that you could potentially make. So for instance, I have some different careers on the screen here. And if you look at health careers and the educational requirement as related to annual income, right? And this is just one example, but medical jobs with no college degree, you are usually range between 20 and 40,000. versus your nursing career, which is usually an associate or a bachelor's degree, is 40 to 55. And then that advancing nursing career, so this is where that master's degree is going to come into play, typically earns between 60 and 90. And a pharmacist is even more schooling, right? So that's your bachelor's and your PharmD degrees. Those are 90 to 115. And then your physician, right? Your medical doctoral degree usually earns you between 120 to 500,000. So we can see through this example that in this particular field, the more education that we have, the more promising that career trajectory of income. Now, long gone are those days of an employee kind of working for one company for 30 years and then retiring with a pension, right? A lot of companies do not offer these things anymore. So if you're like the average person, you know, we changed jobs like 10 times in your lifetime. I think my freshman year of college, I probably had 4 or 5 different jobs before I landed with Golden One. And I'm an anomaly, right? Like I've been with the credit union for 17 years and that's unheard of. When I say that, people go, 17 years, what were you, 3 when you started, right? And so you just don't hear people doing that anymore because there is something to be said about the economy, the pandemic, and this idea of kind of job hopping to get your career sets in or that experience you want in order to eventually get the career or work in the field that's desired. And that's another thing to consider, right? A lot of people change their professions, and we've seen a lot of that here as we're coming out of the pandemic and technology shifts, right? We have to weigh out the pros and cons of this. And a lot of times you're going to change your profession like at least 4 times. Statistics show at least 4 times that you're going to change your career. But getting your education is going to open up a lot more options over the course of your life. So some things that you should consider is that, one, a lot of employers are not going to hire someone without an education unless it's some kind of entry-level position, right? And then in order to advance from that entry-level position, this is where you're going to typically need some kind of degree. You can no longer do it on hard work and merit alone, right? So someone with a master's degree, for example, can get a job as a factory worker, but a person without a college diploma, can't be like a high school teacher. And a lot of times those promotions with employers are tied to more education, right? Once again, that school teacher is never going to become a principal unless he or she has that master's degree. So the importance and power of more education and experience under your belt. Another way to really look at the value of your education is from that employer perspective. There's a lot of educational requirements that are an easy way to kind of narrow down an application field. And employers prefer those who've completed a higher level of education. A lot of times when we apply for jobs, a computer or an algorithm does that initial shift through applications, right? So you might look at an application and you might look at all those job requirements and you're like, yeah, I can do all of those, but I don't have that educational requirement, right? Oftentimes they won't even look, the prospective employer won't even look at all the great things you're doing because your application will have already have gotten sifted out of the bunch, if you will, if you don't have that educational requirement. So anytime you're applying for a position where you don't meet one of those requirements, if they give you an option to petition, right, or to have somebody else look at the application outside of the bot, I would recommend that step. I know, for example, looking at our local college district, for example, or our local junior college, my field of study, what I received my master's in from Fresno State, was composition theory. That was my master's degree. It wasn't labeled English, right? So because of that, my application for many years just kind of got thrown to the wayside by the computer. And it wasn't until I hit that petition button that I started getting the interviews for the job, right? So be mindful of those in that application field for employment. Of course, completing that advanced level of education is important because it shows employers that you have a drive and that you're committed to learn, and you can apply information and ideas and theories and formulas to achieve various tasks and goals. You can also view it as an investment in yourself because it allows you to interact with other people, helps you refine your communication skills, including those of persuasion and maybe conflict resolution and teamwork. You could sharpen your time and task management skills, and you can learn from others. But you don't always need a degree subject connected exactly to the career you want. Obviously, some careers require a specific degree like engineering or medical or sciences, right? But there is a way sometimes that these jobs those skill sets can bleed into other professions as well. You just have to be mindful and tweak your application to fit that particular field that you're applying for. So why you should start working now, right? It's never too early to start building your work experience. A college degree is very valuable, but it's even more useful when you pair it alongside a resume with hands-on experience. Because students who work during high school and college, they're able to demonstrate this experience, which also shows that they're able to balance work and education at the same time. Although it might not always seem related, right, or unrelated, scooping ice cream or selling clothing in a retail store, it does develop your work ethic and some soft skills, right? So I think of things like communication and problem solving, and time management, self-confidence, the ability to accept and learn from criticism, and working in that team environment, right? So even those small jobs that you don't think relate to your field, they still help you build some of these soft skills. And in today's competitive workplace, it's not enough to be highly trained in technical skills without developing those softer skills, right? Those interpersonal and relationship building skills that help you communicate and collaborate effectively. As we move more and more and more into this post-pandemic and we get out of this Zoom mentality, right? We're going to lean more heavily as a society back into that community aspect, right? Back into those personal relationships and building those relationships. So it's going to be really important that we have those skills and emphasize those skills on our resume, right? So relationship building and that you communicate and collaborate effectively. So let's talk about once we get the job, right? How do you start earning some money, or where can you start? Now, if you're among the many teens and young adults who need or want to earn money to buy things, maybe you're going to save up for a car, you're going to help pay for next semester or make some other big purchases. There are basically two ways to start working. And that's either by getting an informal job, like, babysitting or pet sitting, or getting some kind of formal work experience. And a great place to kind of start on that search is right there at the university, right? There's a lot of resources right there at Fresno State for you to check out, including our Career Center. Some other great places to start are going to be your retail and grocery store workers. Clothing and retail store managers look for young adults to work cash registers and keep shelves stocked, especially during the holidays and summer seasons, which is upcoming. So stay tuned for those job postings. They should come in hot and heavy soon. And then you might want to, check with movie theaters or clothing, home improvement, some of those big box stores like that Best Buy near you. They're available for jobs as well. Of course, once again, there's a lot of resources in the community, including job fairs. Fresno State often has them, as well as other job fairs throughout the community. I know, for example, the baseball stadium here in town has job fairs on a constant and is looking for people, as well as our local casinos, right? And so these different fairs and events allow you to learn about employment opportunities with local companies who recruit people and meet them face to face. It's also a good area for you to kind of practice your skills, those things that you're going to need in form of communication. It might also be a great place to get some feedback on things like your resume, give you the opportunity to dress for an interview and learn what types of questions to ask during an interview. And of course, social media is another great resource. LinkedIn has lots of job postings all the time, right? 52% of employers use social networking sites to kind of research job candidates as well. So be mindful of what types of things you are posting on your social media. I know as I hired candidates for my department recently, social media was one of the first things I checked. Right? I'm going to Google that person and see what they're up to, what their personality is, and whether or not their vibe is going to work with my team, right? So be mindful of what you're posting on social media sites, because your employer will look those up as well. And before you, kind of post that update, think whether it might be questionable or inappropriate, because if your gut is telling you it is, then check yourself before it becomes public, because building that positive professional online presence can also help you stand out and represent who you are in status updates and posts, right? Because showing off your personality could be one way to seal the deal and get you that job. Another great resource for jobs is just friends and family, right? One of the best ways to find a job is to use your network. You can check with your school guidance officer, your coaches, trusted neighbors, because the more you ask, the better chance you are going to have at earning some money, either from a regular job or, like I said, one of those off jobs that aren't really taxed, right? Like maybe you need to house sit for a while, or maybe somebody needs you to just watch their dog or walk them because they've recently had surgery or something along those lines, right? So good ways to earn a little extra money. Of course, there's a lot of youth employment programs out there as well. So knowing how to find and keep a job is crucial for entering the working world of adulting, but it's also an important survival skill for a lot of years to come. So definitely check out your local resources, your conservation corps and programs on state campus to help you with getting a job within those programs. Of course, there's some other things we've already said: pet sitting or dog walking. You can house sit. Another local one that's going to be up and coming as we move into spring is those farmers markets. So do a little research with the county. If you're growing a garden, maybe you can sell those veggies, right? Or maybe there's something that you make or you sew, or if you like to knit in between classes, it might be an opportunity for you to have a booth there at the farmers market and sell some of those objects as well. Now, when we start to shift and start looking for those jobs, your resume and your references are going to be key. A resume is kind of a must when you just start to develop your career, and take the time to work on your resume is really an important step, right? Because whether or not you're looking for, a summer job or a part-time position or an internship, you're gonna need to impress that potential employer by finding a way to kind of set yourself apart from the dozens of other young adults and teenagers who will be applying for those jobs. And because a lot of you might have limited or no work experience, you're gonna need to rely on selling yourself and your personal references, both of which could be very powerful in your job search. So think of your resume as an advertisement that calls attention to the fact that you're the best person for that job, right? Knowing of your skills and include some statements that lets the potential employer know what you like to do for them or why you'd be great at it and why you want to work for them, right? Be sure to highlight any skills that might be a value to your employer, your social media, your languages, your athletic accomplishments, any proficiencies that you have with software. And of course, your personal references, they can definitely help you get hired. And even if you aren't asked for those personal references, make sure you take them with you to your interview because you will always want to provide a list of at least 3, right? So look at your network of people who can kind of attest to your character, like your teachers, your coaches, maybe church staff, neighbors, or anyone that you've done some volunteer or paid work for. And then, of course, make sure you let your references know that you're going to be using them because this is the polite thing to do. And it's going to give them some time to really think about how they're going to brag about you. Now, once you do land that job, because you will, right? Right. And a lot of times we've dreamed about that first paycheck. For some of you that have already received one, you remember what that's like, right? Receiving that first paycheck. Because when you get it, whether it's in a paper form or electronic form, it's important for us to understand what all those numbers and categories and acronyms on your pay stub mean. And it can be pretty intimidating if you don't know what it means, right? For starters, I think it's really important that we understand the difference between gross pay and net pay. Because a lot of times when we get that paycheck, we're pretty surprised when the amount of that paycheck isn't what we were expecting, right? Your gross pay and net pay will both be on your stub, and your gross pay is probably the amount that you thought you'd receive, and it's usually calculated with your hourly pay times your hours worked, right? But then taxes come in, right? And they start taking all different kinds of things away. And that's when we get to the net pay or your take-home pay, as it's commonly referred. And this is the amount that you get, once again, after your taxes and deductions are taken out. Some deductions are required, like your state and your federal income tax, and others aren't required by law, but are things that you can opt into, like your retirement, your medical, dental, and other benefits that you have. You'll also see something called FICA, which stands for Federal Insurance Contributions Act. This money is taken out of your worker's paycheck to pay taxes for government programs. And those will be things like Social Security, retirement, and Medicare benefits. It's a mandatory payroll deduction, but some states have different rules regarding what and how much they take out. So as we move into more remote roles and remote working, and if you find yourself working for another state but living here in California, that dollar amount can be very different from state to state. Of course, once you are starting to get paid, you got to figure out what to do next, right? Now what? First, you're going to want to double check that hourly pay and the hours worked on your pay stub are correct. Because if they're not, you might be getting underpaid, and that's never okay, right? And if it's not correct, make sure that you're talking to your manager or your supervisor, because they'll be able to help you understand what you're seeing is correct and check for any of those inaccuracies. Now, I want to talk to you all a little bit about direct deposit. Most of us know what this is, but if we don't, I think it's important to cover a little bit of what direct deposit is. A direct deposit is a deposit of electronic funds from one bank account to another. So rather than a physical paper check, the most common use for direct deposit is those paychecks. So why is it important to use this? Well, when direct deposit first launched, it was scary, right? Because nobody understood how it worked. But now I've got to say there's a lot more pros than there are cons to direct deposit, right? You use direct deposit, and one of the most obvious is the ease of use, right? Because you don't have to go to the ATM, or you don't have to walk into the bank or take a picture of it to get in your account. And after you set up your direct deposit, there's really no further action required on your part, right? So the funds are just automatically added into your account. And because it's electronic, everyone has a record of the payments. So it's easy to see in your account's transaction history. Of course, it's also secure because there isn't a physical check floating around to kind of be stolen or altered or goodness, cashed fraudulently, right? So direct deposit can really be beneficial and a lot more secure. Also, a lot of financial institutions advertise that you get paid faster as another benefit of direct deposit, because those funds hit your account a day or two earlier than a paper check would. And of course, once again, you save time not having to deposit that check and waiting for it to clear. If you want to set up direct deposit, you could either check with your employer, or you could visit your financial institution and they can help you get the numbers that are required to set that up at your employer. Okay, so oftentimes those numbers are something called a routing number, which it's just a fancy number that indicates what financial institution it is. So like Golden One, for example, has its own routing number. Wells Fargo has its own, and Chase has its own, and they're very different numbers, right? And that just says this one's Golden One, this one's Wells Fargo, this one's Chase. And then the next number that you usually have to report for direct deposit is the number that is tied to your banking account, whether that be a savings account or hopefully a checking account, or even a combination of both if you want to split your deposit and have some go to multiple accounts, right? So as that money finally comes in, when you are finally making that money, we need to remember that it's not how much money you make that makes you rich. It's how you spend it. And this is a quote from Charles A. Jaff, who's a senior columnist for MarketWatch and a radio show host. But the importance here is learning how to take control of your money, because it requires planning and setting goals. And goals are really important because a goal is a desired result that you plan to achieve by taking some certain steps. And in order for you to know what your goals are, you really have to think about your ideal future and kind of motivate yourself to turn your vision into reality. And this process of setting goals is hopefully going to help you choose, what you want to go in life, right? A lot of times these goals are separated into short, mid, and long term. Your short-term goals are usually immediate and can be reached in a few days, maybe a month, or up to a year. Things like saving for video games or designer shoes, or making an A in math, or getting the lead role in the class play are really good examples of these short-term goals. They're usually smaller goals, and they can have a little purpose unless they lead to some kind of larger term objective. And you can use these goals as steps to help you achieve bigger goals. Now, goals that are medium, they kind of take a little longer, typically 1 to 3 years. And this might include things graduating from high school or college, right? And then finally, our long-term goals. These goals take 5 years or longer and can be more difficult because they're further away. They take a whole different mindset to achieve. And these things can include, graduating from college, attending graduate school, running a marathon, or even buying a home, right? So without these goals and without a plan in place, it's really difficult to get on track and achieve these money milestones, if you will. So as you start having income coming in, make sure that you have a plan in place to save for these goals as well as pay for your everyday expenses. Because believe me, that cup of Starbucks is not going to be what you're thinking about 5 years from now, when you're looking at paying for that, updated degree, or you're looking for buying a house, right? That's all money that you could have been saving along the way to achieve that goal. Now, another big turning point and something I think is really important for us to understand is interest. We keep hearing about interest rates on the news going up. I mean, the federal funds reserve rate raised like 8 times since last March, which had different effects on money, right? It had effects on how we earn money and how we spend money. And I think that it's important we understand the difference between types of interest, because interest is one of the most important concepts that we have to understand to kind of master our use of money. When you think about interest, a lot of time we associate it as a bad thing, like paying interest on a credit card or an automobile loan, right? But there's a difference between paying interest and earning interest. When you borrow money, right, you repay the amount that you borrowed plus extra. And this extra represents the cost for you to borrow the money, right? Because nothing in life is free. They're going to charge you for borrowing that money. Now, when you deposit money into, say, an interest-bearing account, like a savings account, your money will be lent out and you're going to earn interest for making your money available to other people. And it's true here, paying interest can sometimes be a problem because you're giving money to someone else to borrow their money. But there is another form of interest that can be a good thing, and that's that earning interest. So remember, interest is not always bad. And this is kind of a concept that we'll focus on in this section to kind of understand why saving money is important and how you can do more with it. Now, I was in a similar call right before this one, and I had someone asking me about the recent closure in the bank, right? You might have heard of it in the news. Those accounts were insured. So everyone where there is insurance on your account, right? Credit unions included. Credit unions are insured by NCUA. Banking establishments are insured by FDIC. Your money is protected up to a certain dollar amount. So when we say that your money that you put in your interest-bearing account is being used for other people to fund their expenses, know that your money is still safe and you can get those funds back as long as you're with a trusted financial institution. So let's talk a little bit about interest and why saving is so important. So to start, I think a good way to start is just to look at simple interest. Okay, simple versus compound interest. When interest is being paid to you, it means that your money is working for you. So let's say you deposit $2,000 in a savings account that gives you 3.5% interest. The bank pays you for the use of your money. And if you leave that $2,000 in the bank for 1 year, at the end of the year, you are going to have $70, right? So simple interest. Your deposit times 3.5% times 1 year is $70. So at the end of the year, you're going to have $2,070 in your account without doing a thing, right? The power of interest. Now, another form of interest that's better than simple interest, because not only will you earn money on what you've saved, you'll also start to earn money on the interest you receive on that money. So let's look at that $2,000 example. You put it in your savings account. If you don't touch it for 5 years, your account will be worth $2,375.38. So in this example, you can see how money grows more quickly when it's earning compound interest than when it's earning simple interest. And if you have this solid understanding of how interest works, this is where you can really start to make some smart decisions with your money, right? So I really want you to think about that power of compound interest and what saving can really do for you. Now, seems like a short-term goal to me when I hear 5 years, right? Maybe a midterm goal. Now, let's talk about you just starting to work, right? I want you to start thinking about retirement too, right? We've all heard Social Security might not be here to fund our retirement. Social Security was never meant to fund all of your retirement. It's there as a supplement, right? So it's important that we save for our future selves as well as our current selves. And I think a good way to demonstrate the power of this compound interest is by stretching these terms out just a little bit further. So let's take a look at this example. So in this example, I put $5,000 in an account that earns 6% when I'm 25. By the time I hit 65, that account will have $51,429 in it. Of course, you're probably going to want to consult a financial advisor to help you create the investment strategy that best works for you and your financial goals. But look how much money it made over time without me doing a thing, right? The power of saving and putting a little bit away. Now, let's check out another example because I know we don't always have that kind of money up front. What if we start smaller, right? And this is still probably a big jump with my next example. But I think you'll kind of get the point of starting to save. And this is through what we call the added benefit of compound interest when you continue to add to your initial investment while that interest is compounding. And so in this example, if you put $500 in an account that earns 6%, you will have $477,220 by the time you are 60. Your total out of pocket, meaning that $500 you put in every month, was only $180,500, which means that over the life of that compounding interest, you've made $295,000 in free money based on that 6%, that estimated 6% return rate, right? Now, most of you are going, okay, where do I go to get that type of rate, right? Once again, you'll want to talk to a financial advisor to kind of get started. But I hope that this opens our eyes just a little bit to see the benefits of compound interest and the importance of starting to save now. Because if we started later saving, maybe you decide to start saving after you graduate, right? After you land that job, you're going to start somewhere in this neck of the woods, right? You're not going to have that same trajectory as if you started when you were 25, right? So the importance of saving now. So become a saver. Your experience with money right now, both good and bad, is going to influence your spending habits when you're later in adulthood and you've finished school. So learning how to save can set you on a path to financial independence. So I have a couple tips here that'll help you master the art of successfully managing and saving your money. First, start a savings account, right? And contribute to it regularly. I know at Golden One, all of our members actually have a savings account, right? Even if they think and then they might, if it's $10 or $100, just set some saving targets and kind of stick to them. And if you have a goal, maybe you use an online savings calculator to see how long it's going to take you to reach it. because putting your money in an account is going to help you reduce any temptation to spend it, right? And if you have direct deposit, maybe you set it up to do it automatically. That way it's out of sight, out of mind, right? And you're still working to save. Of course, we're also going to want to learn how to budget efficiently, right? Take charge of your money because it's going to teach you some very valuable financial lessons. You'll likely avoid kind of purchasing unnecessary things or make unplanned expenses, which is going to help you understand the significance of having a limited amount of money. Identify your spending habits. Maybe you need to sit down and really track your day-to-day spending patterns so that way you can see where your money is going. It's not only big purchases that you make that make your money go away. Everyday little things like eating out or frequent trips to that coffee shop can leave you with no money pretty quickly. So to know your spending habits, try to keep a tally on them. Find out where you're spending that money and take note of everything that you're spending on so that way you can visually see where it is that you can reduce. And then make saving a priority. Prioritize your money. When you begin to receive money from a job, you can find out how direct your money where it matters most, like a savings plan or a college education or transportation. And this is going to help you keep a good balance between spending and saving. And finally, saving money is hard, especially at our age. And it's even tougher when you have friends who are out buying new clothes or going on weekend trips. Just remember, you'll be doing yourself a huge favor if you start saving towards your future while your future is way ahead of you. Now, I know I've gone over a lot of material today, and I do want to point you in the direction of some great resources to help you on your financial education journey. At Golden One, we do have online videos and webcasts similar to the ones that you'll be seeing with Money Management Center. We have webinars and offer workshops similar to this one. We focus on them a couple times throughout the month on an array of topics. We have a very robust podcast station. Our podcast station releases at least 2 episodes per month. This month is a focus on homeownership. If there's another topic that you're interested in, please visit our channel on Apple, Google, or Spotify to get some financial tips and insights. And finally, last but not least, we do have a learning lab through our financial wellness site. And this learning lab has a lot of interactive modules to help you grow your financial literacy knowledge and know-how. I want to thank you all for joining me today. If anybody has any questions, I haven't been seeing anything pop up in the chat. I'll be more than happy to stick around and answer those questions on any topic for that matter.
Thank you so much, Megan. We really appreciate your time, the information that you shared. I know that a lot of students, we do have our career center here on campus as well. And one of the things that we always hear is that, how can I start, gaining an income right now as a student? What are the opportunities? So this is great information. I put in a chat box our website for Money Management Center. Again, we have our calendar of events. So we have multiple events throughout the semester. And then Megan is one of our presenters, reoccurring. So we appreciate her time. We have some other resources on our website as well. And you can always schedule an appointment with us, students. If you need to, like a coaching session, we're more than happy to meet with you in person or virtually. But our website is there. And yeah, right now we're just leave it if anybody has questions. If not, thank you so much for your time. We have recorded this webinar and it will be posted hopefully, if not by the end of this week, next week. It'll be on our website already. And I'll stop the recording.